Welcome to the Brainrich podcast. Today we are excited to have Dr. Larry Waldman, a PhD, ABPP psychologist and author and speaker with over 4 decades of experience in mental health. Dr. Waldman has dedicated his career to helping children, teens, parents, and professionals navigate life's changes with practical solutions. He has written several books, and today we'll dive into his insights on parenting and wellness. Welcome, Dr. Waldman.
Here, I like that introduction. Very nice.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Dr. Waldman, we really appreciate your time and being here and your expertise. And I would like to cover this podcast from the using the behavioral issues as a topic. I would like to start with the attention and focus problems. When a child has difficulty focusing or following instructions, parents often wonder if it's just a phase or something more like ADHD. What solutions what should they look for before considering an evaluation?
That's a good question, of course, and a lot of it depends on the child's age and so on, and what you are seeing. Obviously, a younger child is going to be much more active than older ones, and so on. Also, we need to keep in mind that if we're really talking about a true ADD or ADHD, that is a genetic issue. So one of the first things parents have to do is to look inward. For example, if dad, let's say, had a problem with attention and struggled in school and so on, and we're talking usually about a boy, not a girl, particularly for ADHD, then the odds are higher. If mom and dad and no one in the family has had that problem, then it's less likely. It could still be, but it's less likely than it could. Now, if mom was at one point or another ever diagnosed with AD, most women are diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, not ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. But if mom was diagnosed with ADD, then the odds are quite high for every male that she has that happen as well. What the signs to look for, of course, are these. Can the child entertain themselves for any reasonable amount of time? ADHD or ADD often shows up in sleep problems. Do they have trouble falling asleep? Do they continue to awaken regularly? And so on. Do you find that they have trouble following directions? They maintain their focus in things of that nature. By the time the child is, I'd say preschool, 4, maybe 5, somewhere between 3 to 5, and so on, and they're in a preschool, usually you can get some insight from the preschool teacher as well. Now, obviously, we don't expect a 3-year-old to be sitting at their desk and reading War and Peace. But there are some things that they could do and should do, like maybe finish coloring a page, as opposed to scribbling on one page, turning the page, scribble another, turn the page, and so on. So those are the kinds of things we might look at. By the time the child is, I'd say 4, give or take, and if you really think it's a concern, that's when you should probably talk to your pediatrician and then maybe get a referral.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful, Tim. My close friend, she first noticed that her child had very disruptive sleep patterns. And as he grew older, he started having a more defined kind of tantrums. This kind of disruptive behavior grew outside of his sleep pattern. It triggered all the way to the daytime as well. That's why she started to be more alert. And then she went to a doctor and they got diagnosed him. I think there's also different levels of ADHD. Am I right?
Well, of course, there's, as in most things, there's mild, moderate, and severe. It certainly depends on the kid and let's not forget the environment. What we thus far have talked about is the biological perspective, but there are cases where children are living in a chaotic environment where there's lots of yelling and screaming and inconsistent management and so on, where the child could not actually be have ADHD, but more maybe of an anxiety issue based on their living condition. And that's what has to be addressed.
That's good. That's a good point too. So let me go into the emotional regulation, right? Because it all leads into each other. So many parents struggle to help their child manage big emotions like anger or sadness. What tools can parents use to help their child build emotional regulation? And how do they know when it's time to seek professional intervention?
First and foremost, parents have to understand that they are their child's model. What you are doing and what you are displaying is, of course, teaching them. So if you tend to be overreactive, shout and yell and throw things and whatever, so on, or are sitting in a corner and so on, and covering yourself with a blanket, you are teaching your kids things. Remember, the parent is the child's first and only teacher. The child has no idea when they enter the world what is right or wrong, good or bad, and so on. And so the parents have a huge responsibility to teach their kids how to manage themselves. So that's the first piece is be sure you are modeling what it is that you want. Next, of course, and this gets into what you mentioned in your introduction, is the behavioral piece. And that is, again, children live at what they learn based on their experience. Remember, they come into the world, as I like to say, naked and naive. They know nothing. They don't know what's good or bad or simple things. You bring the child home from the hospital and so on. And when you put them to bed, you always turn on a nightlight. You do that now for a couple of months. And then one day you go to your in law's house and you're going to stay overnight and you bring the child and you put the child in a crib there, but there's no nightlight. And guess what?
Child doesn't sleep.
Exactly. Okay. So what happened is you taught them something. Okay. As far as the child is concerned, when I go to bed, there is this light on. Now I'm being put to bed and there's no light. I can't sleep. I'm going to scream and yell and whatever. Okay. Cry until I'm picked up and so forth. And so you see, from day one almost, okay, we are teaching them things, hopefully good things, but sometimes not. Let's face it, these kids could see and hear for the last 2 months or more while in utero. And as far as I know, there's no nightlights there.
Yes.
So when we put them on now, we're doing it for us, maybe so we can see what we're doing. I understand, but we're beginning to teach things that may or may not be, so good. So for example, and another example, of course, has to do, with how we react. I've said this many times that in most homes, when the child throws a tantrum within 30 seconds, it's hard to tell whose tantrum is worse, the child's or the parents'. So, what the child comes to learn is that when I throw a tantrum, so does mom or dad. I'm not just picking on moms. So does mom and or dad. What does that teach the child? Think about it. You're 4 or 5 years old. You're unhappy about something for whatever, and you go, you flop on the ground. And let's say mom is now, yeah, what's wrong with you? Think about how much power, how much control This child is now gleaning with their tantrum. Plus, they're learning that when I tantrum, mom tantrums or dad tantrums. So that's normal. Now, I have two sons. They're both in their 40s. They're both very successful, and they have kids of their own and so on. And I enjoy watching them most of the time raise our grandchildren. They could use a little brushing up here and there, but overall, they're doing a very nice job because they themselves have been trained. Remember, this goes downhill. Okay, what grandma taught mom, mom teaches the kid, and the kid is going to do when he or she becomes a parent. Okay, because that's all most people learn. Okay, they don't go to school for this. While they're getting a PhD, they don't learn about the science of parenting, you understand. They're doing it, most parents, frankly, are doing it by the seat of their pants, which is unfortunate because the child, will learn it if we teach them in a stable kind of way. But in many cases, what happened yesterday has no bearing on what happens today and has no impact on what's going to happen tomorrow. So the child doesn't know what the consequences are going to be for their behavior. Now, when I was raising my kids, for example, if one of my, and they weren't perfect, of course, they were normal kids, but once in a while they would flop to the ground and have a tantrum. Can you guess what I did?
Stay calm,
Yes, but something else.
give them space.
Yes, while they have their tantrum, I would turn around and leave the room. And so what they learn, and I didn't do this once, twice, every time. So it didn't take them long to realize that when I have a hissy, tantruming to myself, no one cares. I don't get anything for it. I'm by myself.
And sometimes tantrums could be also as a call for attention too, right? And it doesn't matter for kids, sometimes it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative attention. They just want attention at that very moment for something, right? And
Let me stop you right there.
yeah.
Okay. That's what you just said is parents say that all the time. It may be for positive or maybe for negative. They don't know it's positive or negative. We make an assumption that they do. The old saying that celebrities live by, that bad publicity is better than no publicity at all. It works just the same way for kids. Okay. Bad attention is better than no attention at all. And if you're a parent and you're providing lots of bad attention as far as the child is concerned, that's it.
They got what
That's
they want.
normal. That's normal. In my books, I refer to that as the negative attention trap that kids and parents get basically stuck in, where the parent pretty much assumes that anything the kid wants, where the kid's going to misbehave and they have to address it. And then, of course, the kid learns that the best way to get attention is to behave in this manner. He doesn't or she doesn't know that it's bad or good. It just is.
That's so true. Yeah.
So
I also,
it's up
Mhm.
to to be aware of that and guide this process. So again, back to the tantrum. My kids learned, of course, when they threw a tantrum, nothing happens. Okay. On the other hand, for example, if let's say I see the child got frustrated with something and I might come to him and say, oh, gee, I really like the way that you handle this situation. This thing broke, and instead, and you came to me and asked me to fix it. And since you asked me so nicely, let's see if we can make this right. So here, what I'm doing now is I'm giving attention
when he needs help
based on what kind of behavior.
before he flipped out.
Yes, but appropriate behavior. Okay. The theory that I was trained in, of course, I got other training as well, but the theory that I was primarily trained in and what I espoused is very simple. Catch them when they're good. If I have to put in a sentence, that's it. See, unfortunately, if you watch most kids and parents interact day in and day out, when are most kids getting most of their attention?
When they do something wrong.
Exactly. And that's been well documented and researched. In fact, in my books, again, that I quote some of this, 90% of the time when children misbehave, they get their parents' attention. On the other hand, only about 15% of the time when the child is behaving are they getting parental attention. So, what would you expect the child to do? Misbehave, according to us. They don't know it's misbehavior. They just know that's what gets me noted.
Yeah, yeah. They just want to be noticed, and it's a simple thing for kids. As you said, they sometimes they don't differentiate between good or bad. They cannot express the love that they seek in other ways. So they throw in this tantrum because they learn once I'm throwing a tantrum, no matter what, mom or dad will show up and they will try to comfort me or something like that. And that's when it's basically I need to do this in order for them to come over, like in a way.
Now, look, if the child falls down and hurts their knee or whatever, okay. Yes, the child might be yelling. All right, in that case, sure. But if the child is playing with something and whatever, they lose the game, maybe it doesn't work, and they hit the table and so on. No, okay. This theory that I operate on is extremely simple to understand. Okay. You catch them while they're good, you ignore them while they're bad, and if they're really bad, you consequent the behavior. Okay, like maybe place them in the room for a couple of minutes or remove a privilege or something of that nature. Okay? That's that's simplicity. That's it. It is very easy to comprehend, and that's why I like to code this process because on one hand, it's easy to understand. It's very difficult to implement on a day by day, minute by minute basis because you have to constantly monitor your behavior with respect to the child's.
That's so true.
That's the hard part. But once parents get it, I used to say all the time, my children manipulated me all through their childhood. They behaved relatively well. They got my attention and things went along smoothly. They did manipulate me by behaving the way they knew they needed to behave so that I would attend to them. As far as they were concerned, that was normal.
This is what my husband sometimes tells, you're so easy to get manipulated. I'm like, but that's probably my way. I have 3 kids. I have 8, 5, and 2, 2 girls and a boy. And my girls, they're very smart. They know that when they come to mommy, they can get everything, pretty much everything that they want. But I have my reasoning. Sometimes I allow things, sometimes I don't. Majority of the time, I will allow things because I know in my reasoning, it's okay. Some of the things, they don't ask for crazy things. And for example, like some sweets or something, I'm very reasonable with this. I'm not super strict because if you don't give sweets, they still will take it some way or another. But I try to educate them. Okay, a little bit is good. When it's too much, it's bad. Something like that. So I have my reasoning. But I do get that phrase. You're so easy to get manipulated. But to me, this is just my way how I connect with my kids too. Let me ask you this. It's a little bit navigating around this topic, but I think it's very important when you have multiple kids and you said you have 2 sons, right? What is their age difference?
4 years.
4 years. So it's a good range because by the time the second one came in, the first one was already very aware of his surroundings and he was just 1 until the second one shows up. So how would you address multi-family, multi-kids family when older or younger sibling misbehaves just to get as much attention as he wants to just because he doesn't feel loved or just like having enough attentions, like jealousy kind of thing.
Of course, you can take time to sit down with your kids and have these little talks about jealousy and things of that nature. And that, look, your younger brother or whatever is going to require more attention now than you do. And of course, but at the same time, you can't ignore the older one totally in favor of the one. So you have to be aware of that as well. But here again, you and your spouse, by the way, have to work together too. One of the more problematic issues that happen in a lot of families is that parents become where the kids learn that if they don't like what dad says, they can go to mom and have that overturned. Because let me tell you, you start that program, you're going to rue that for the next 18 years. Of course, our kids tried that when they were younger. I remember, I forget which kid, I think it was the younger one actually. He was like 4 or 5, and he had done something, pretty inappropriate. And my wife said there was no more TV for the rest of the day, or this, whatever he did, I forget. And he comes into my office and he says, Daddy, I'm so mad at mom. And I said, why is that? I did this and so, and mom said I couldn't watch TV for the rest. That's not fair. I want you to go and tell mom, stop that. And I looked at him and I said, Chad, you and mom and I are a team. And I do not like you trying to get me to go against mom for them. For doing this, not only will you not watch TV today, you're not going to watch it tomorrow either. Now leave. Now, what did he learn?
He cannot get around. You're united, right? So he cannot get around just like a
Exactly. You're united, even if you think your mate is wrong. Now, I'm not talking about abuse now. If the parent is hitting the kid or being physical, that's a whole different story. I don't want to get into it. But even if you think, oh, the whole day of TV is too much, believe me, the kid will survive. And when you think, oh, in your head, the kid, you go against dad, even though you in your head, you think you have a reason, you are setting up some real uncomfortable thing. Not to mention stuff with the kids, but also with your partner. Having children is a great stress on your relationship if you cannot work it out together. And remember, the way you were raised, I'm sure, was different than how he was raised. The simple fact that one's a girl and one's a guy, of course, that doesn't exclude same-sex parentings, but still, even if you're the same sex, you've been raised differently, most likely. You haven't been raised exactly alike. My wife was coddled, frankly, and I was left alone. So there were different ways I got trained, and I guess let me come back to that. There are lots of books, seminars, and so on that parents can avail themselves of to learn how to do this very important task of raising a human being instead of just going at it like, whatever, this is how I feel today. This is how I'm going to act today. No,
I
consistency.
think it's a whole science for raising kids and retraining yourself. Some of the things that you had during your childhood, the way you were raised, the way you want to raise your kids, working with your partner is a whole scientific project.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's true. Let me ask you this. What are the some most effective strategies parents can use to address disruptive behaviors at home, such as tantrums and defiance, before seeking professional help? We did cover giving them space. We did cover not overreact to their reactions. But what if that behavior what if a parents cannot address that behavior properly and it persists? And those tantrums, sometimes they get really physical. Child is like hitting walls or is like hurting himself in a way. And as a parent, you cannot just stay calm and watch you go crazy as well, right?
Well, yes. And as I said before, when we look at syndromes, we have the mild, moderate, and extreme. First and foremost, it's the parent has to look at themselves. I probably counseled in my time close to 1,000 sets of parents over 50 years, just about. And I'd say in the overwhelming majority of time, that counseling, which changed their behavior, altered the child's behavior. Even though one of my specialties, of course, was child psychology, if you look in my office most of the time, who do you think was sitting there?
Parents.
Yes, not the kid. I'm not going to sit down, frankly, with a 4-year-old and say, Billy, this tantruming behavior was not really very appropriate. Come on, what is a 4-year-old? No, I'm going to work with the change agents, which of course is the parents. Now, not always, and of course, if the child is approaching the extreme range where they're hurting themselves, where they're in some cases destroying things. Now, what I can't remember which kid anymore. This is like a half century ago now. One of my kids, while during timeout, was so angry, threw a block and it embedded himself in the whiteboard in the wall.
Wow.
And when I came into a minute or so later, once he served his time, so to speak, and I came out, I could tell that he was uncomfortable. And I looked around and there I saw this block buried in the wall. And I pulled it up. And I took a crane and drew a circle right around it. And I turned to him and I said, Josh, what does this hole here represent? And I lost my temper, Dad. I said, yeah. How does that look? Oh, bad, Dad. Ugly. When can we fix it? He said, no, I'm not fixing it so fast. You're going to look at that hole and you're going to remind yourself, if you're going to lose your temper, this is what it looks like. It looks like ugliness. And I walked out.
And how old was he at the time?
4 to 6, somewhere in there.
Yeah, that's a lesson.
I took my time and ultimately we patched it up, but certainly not right away.
Mhm. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Dr. Waldman, is there any closing thoughts? Anything that you would like to, maybe I didn't ask, but you would like for listeners to know, and maybe give some tips for parents managing their kids' emotions?
I think I touched on that. Again, remember, you're the trainer. You have absolute power, which again, over time, of course, wanes. So during those first formative year, up through first, maybe second grade, parents can make major changes, in their kids' behavior, and even afterward. But then again, of course, it becomes more challenging. Once the kids become preteens or adolescents, obviously, you have to use more of a different approach. You're not going to time out a 14-year-old. Come on. Besides, the kid would say, fine, I'm going to go in there and play video games. Yeah. So first and foremost, parents have to recognize they're the trainer. It's up to them. Catch them when they're good. Turn it around. Instead of focusing all this attention on the bad behavior, focus it on the good. Get educated. There's books out there. Obviously mine. I assume I'll get a chance to talk about it. I have several books on parenting. Who's Raising Whom? Coping with Your Adolescent. Love Your Child More Than You Hate Your Ex. All of those books teach parents, how to more effectively manage their kids. Obviously, I'm not the only author out there, but these books are based on, as I said, about half a century of experience of working in the trenches, hundreds of families, probably a couple thousand, and so on. Get educated, attend a parenting group and such. If your child has ADHD or something else, join a support group while you're doing that. And as I'm saying that, by the way, you did mention that some of the parents have kids with disabilities. And I can't tell you how many times parents have said to me, Dr. Waldman, I understand your theory and how it works, but my kid has a learning disability, an attention deficit disorder, anxiety, depression, autism, or whatever. And so that's different. Your theory won't work. And here's my answer. Wrong. In fact, this theory was developed back in the 50s, back in the 40s and 50s on seriously handicapped kids. And I was trained in this theory at Milwaukee Children's Hospital back in the 60s. Yes, right? It does work. And just because your kid has a disability of some sort, that doesn't mean you allow him or her to get away with things, because you're not doing them a favor. If anything, you need to be stricter, because when these kids become adults, the world isn't going to care if they have a learning disability or an attention deficit disorder or anxiety or whatever. They're not. They're going to want them to do a job and do it right. Don't give them that much slack.
Got it. Thank you so much, Dr. Waldman. Tell please where people can find you, where they can find your books, maybe get in contact with you.
My email address is LFW, those are my initials, at LarryWaldmanPhD.com. My website is Top Phoenix, like the city in Arizona, where most of the time, topphoenixpsychologist.com. I have 8 books that I've done. I'll try to list them in order that of publication. Who's Raising Whom? Coping with Your Adolescent. How Come I Love Him but Can't Live with Him? That's the marriage book. Too Busy Earning a Living to Make Your Fortune. Overcoming Your Negotiophobia. The Graduate Course You Never Had. That's for mental health professionals on how to market and manage their mental health practice. Love Your Child More Than You Hate Your Ex, what every divorced parent needs to know. And the last book that just came out is entitled Silver Sex, Insights into Senior Sexuality. All my books are available on my website and, of course, on Amazon.
Got it. Thank you so much. It was very valuable. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and giving tips and insights. And I hope people who listen, they took that into consideration. Yeah, addressing child's behaviors could be tricky, and you do have to get ready to retrain yourself. If you notice that you're flipping out, it's easier for you to get educated and work on yourself than expecting your child to follow the exact instructions that you're imposing on them, right? It's faster for you to get educated and imply some changes, I would say. So thank you so much. That was an enlightening conversation with Dr. Larry Waldman, from his work in mental health to his guidance on parenting and wellness. Dr. Waldman has shared invaluable advice, and be sure to check out his books and stay tuned for his latest work. Tell me again.
The latest book is for seniors. It's entitled Silver Sex. Yeah.
So you can gift it to your parents.
There you go.
Yeah, it could be still used. Yeah, but thank you so much, Dr. Larry. I'm very happy we met, we connect, and your insights are valuable.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.